The massive space station floated like a giant crystal in the darkness of space. The Galactic Tribunal was the most important court in the galaxy. Ships from dozens of different alien worlds came here to settle disputes and make important decisions. Today, something very unusual was happening. Hee-Jin Park stood in the human embassy section of the station, reading a message on her tablet. She had been Earth's main diplomat for 10 years, and she had never seen anything like this. The message was from the Vorthak Empire, one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. They were asking for something strange. The Vorthak wanted information about a human soldier. Not just any information. They wanted his death count. They wanted to know how many enemies this human had killed in battle. The request seemed simple, but Hee-Jin knew it was not normal. The Vorthak were famous for keeping perfect records of every battle and every warrior. They had databases that went back thousands of years. Why would they need information from Earth about one human soldier? The soldier's name was Kim Tae-ho. Hee-Jin had never heard of him before. She checked Earth's military records but found nothing special. Kim Tae-ho was listed as a supply officer who worked in Seoul. He managed equipment and supplies for other soldiers. He was not a famous fighter or a war hero. He was just a regular person doing a regular job. Hee-Jin called her assistant, Young Soo. "Have you ever heard of Kim Tae-ho?" she asked. Young Soo looked through his files. "No, Ambassador. He is not in any of our important military records. He works in logistics, managing supplies and equipment. Why do you ask?" The Vorthak Empire wants his death count, Hee-Jin said. "They want to put his combat record in their Grand War archives." Young Soo looked confused. "That doesn't make sense. The Grand War archives only record the greatest warriors in galactic history. Kim Tae-ho is just a supply officer. The Grand War archives were famous throughout the galaxy. Only the most deadly and successful fighters were recorded there. Warriors who had killed thousands of enemies in single battles. Fighters who had won impossible victories against terrible odds. Heroes whose names were known across dozens of worlds. Why would they want to include a human supply officer? 2 days later, Hee-Jin received another message. This time, it was an official summons to appear before the Galactic Tribunal. The message was signed by judges from 12 different alien species. The Vorthak Empire had made a formal request for Kim Tae-ho's military records. If Earth refused to provide them, it could damage relations between humans and the rest of the galaxy. Hee-Jin knew she had to take this seriously. She sent an urgent message to Earth, requesting all available information about Kim Tae-ho. She also asked for permission to bring him to the tribunal if necessary. The response came back quickly from General Park Min-ho, head of Earth's Space Defense Force. "We are investigating this matter," the general's message said. "Kim Tae-ho is indeed a real person, and he has served in our military for 22 years. However, he has never been in direct combat. We are confused about why the aliens are interested in him. We will send you his complete service record within 24 hours. The service record arrived as promised. Hee-Jin read through it carefully. Kim Tae-ho had joined the military when he was 18 years old. He had trained as a logistics specialist, someone who managed supplies, equipment, and transportation for military operations. His record showed steady promotions and excellent performance reviews. His supervisors praised his attention to detail and his ability to solve problems quickly. But there was nothing about combat, nothing about battles or enemies killed. The record showed that he had been present during several military operations, but always in support roles. He had managed supply lines, coordinated equipment delivery, and helped with evacuation procedures. He had never fired a weapon at an enemy. The tribunal hearing was scheduled for the following week. Hyejin spent her time preparing, trying to understand why this was happening. She researched the Vorthak Empire and learned more about their culture. The Vorthak were a warrior species who valued strength and military skill above everything else. They kept detailed records of every battle because they believed that studying great warriors could help them become better fighters. The Vorthak representative arrived at the station 3 days before the hearing. His name was Commander Vextala, and he was a large, powerful alien with dark blue skin and multiple arms. He wore the ceremonial armor of a Vorthak war leader, decorated with symbols showing his many victories in battle. Hyejin met with Commander Vextala in one of the station's diplomatic meeting rooms. The alien was polite but firm about his request. "Ambassador Park," he said through his translation device, "we must have Kim Taeho's death count. His name appears in too many battle reports from across the galaxy. Our intelligence analysts believe he may be one of the most dangerous warriors alive." "I'm afraid there has been a mistake," Hyejin replied. "Kim Taeho is not a warrior. He is a supply officer who has never been in combat." Commander Vextala's multiple eyes focused on her with what seemed like disbelief. "That cannot be correct. Our records show that human forces become significantly more effective when Kim Taeho is present in the operational area. Enemy casualties increase by an average of 300%. These numbers indicate an extremely skilled fighter." Hyejin shook her head. "I have reviewed his complete military record. He has 0 confirmed kills. He has never fired a weapon in battle. He manages supplies and equipment." The Vorthak commander was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke again, his voice showing confusion and frustration. "If this is true, then we do not understand. How can someone who does not fight cause so many enemy deaths? There must be something you are not telling us." "I assure you, Commander, we are being completely honest," Hyejin said. "Perhaps there has been some kind of administrative error? Maybe your records are confusing Kim Taeho with someone else?" "No," Commander Vextala said firmly. "Our records are perfect. Kim Taeho's name appears in connection with 37 major military operations over the past 20 years. In every case, enemy casualties were much higher than expected. In every case, human forces performed better than their individual capabilities should have allowed. This pattern is too consistent to be a coincidence." The commander stood up, his armor making metallic sounds as he moved. "Ambassador Park, we will proceed with the tribunal hearing as scheduled. We believe that humans are hiding important information about Kim Taeho. Perhaps he is your secret super soldier, or perhaps he has special abilities that you do not want other species to know about. But we will discover the truth." After the commander left, Hyejin sat alone in the meeting room thinking about what she had learned. The Vorthak were not known for making mistakes in their military records. If they said Kim Taeho's name appeared in connection with major battles, then it probably did. But how could a supply officer be connected to so many enemy deaths? She sent another urgent message to Earth asking for more detailed information about Kim Taeho's service history. She specifically requested information about every military operation he had been involved in, no matter how small his role had been. The response would not come for several days, but Hyejin had a feeling that this case was going to be much more complicated than anyone had expected. Something about Kim Taeho had caught the attention of the galaxy's most powerful military empire. Soon, she would have to figure out what that something was. Kim Taeho was having a normal Tuesday morning when his world changed forever. He sat at his desk in the quartermaster's office at Seoul Military Base, checking inventory reports on his computer. Around him, other office workers typed on keyboards and talked quietly on phones. It was the kind of peaceful, boring day that Tai-ho preferred. He was 43 years old, with graying hair and reading glasses that he wore when working with small numbers on spreadsheets. His uniform was always clean and properly pressed, but it had no decorations or medals. He was proud of his work, but he never expected anyone outside the military to notice what he did. His job was simple but important. He made sure that soldiers had the equipment they needed. If a unit needed ammunition, Tai-ho arranged for it to be delivered. If they needed medical supplies, he found the fastest way to get them there. If their vehicles broke down, he coordinated repairs or replacements. It was detail work that required careful attention and good organization, but it was not exciting. At 10:30 in the morning, Colonel Lee Dong-woo walked into the office. The colonel was Tai-ho's supervisor, a serious man who had been in the military for 30 years. He looked worried about something. "Tai-ho," the colonel said, "I need to speak with you privately." They went to the colonel's office, which had windows overlooking the base's main parade ground. Colonel Lee closed the door and asked Tai-ho to sit down. "This is going to sound very strange," the colonel began, "but I have received a message from the Galactic Tribunal. They want information about your military service record." Tai-ho blinked in surprise. "The Galactic Tribunal? Why would they care about me?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," Colonel Lee said. "Apparently some alien empire called the Vorthak wants to know your death count. They think you might be one of the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy." Tai-ho laughed, thinking it was a joke. "That's ridiculous. I've never killed anyone. I've never even fired a weapon at an enemy. I work in supply management." "I know," the colonel said. "That's what makes this so confusing. But the request is real, and it's official. They've asked the tribunal to investigate your military record." Tai-ho shook his head slowly. "There must be some mistake. Maybe they're confusing me with someone else who has the same name." "I thought so too," Colonel Lee replied. "But they specifically mentioned Seoul Military Base and your service number. They definitely mean you." The colonel explained what he knew about the situation. The Vorthak Empire was famous throughout the galaxy for their military record-keeping. They maintained detailed databases about great warriors from every species. For some reason, they believed that Tai-ho belonged in those databases. "I don't understand," Tai-ho said. "What exactly do they think I've done?" "They think you have a high death count," the colonel explained. "In their culture, warriors are measured by how many enemies they kill in battle. They seem to believe that you have killed many alien soldiers." Tai-ho felt confused and a little frightened. He had always tried to live a quiet, peaceful life. The idea that aliens across the galaxy thought he was some kind of deadly warrior was disturbing. "Colonel, you know my record," Tai-ho said. "I've been in the military for 22 years, and I've never been in a single battle. I've never even drawn my weapon outside of training exercises." "I know," Colonel Lee said. "That's why I'm as confused as you are. But we need to take this seriously. I'm going to call in Captain Yu Jae-sung to help us figure this out." Captain Yu had been Tai-ho's commanding officer during the early years of first contact with alien species. He was now retired, but he still lived near the base and sometimes worked as a consultant on military history. He arrived at the base 2 hours later. Captain Yu was a small, energetic man in his 60s. He had been present during some of humanity's first battles with alien forces, and he remembered those days clearly. He greeted Tai-ho warmly. They had always worked well together. "So, Tai-ho," Captain Yu said with a smile, I hear the aliens think you're a secret super soldier. It's not funny, Taeho replied. This could cause serious problems for Earth's relations with other species. You're right, Captain Yu said, becoming more serious. Let's review your service record and see if we can figure out what's happening. They spent the rest of the day going through files and records. Captain Yu brought out old mission reports and deployment records from storage. Colonel Lee accessed computer databases that contained details about every military operation Taeho had been involved in. What they found was exactly what they expected. A long record of excellent logistics work with no combat activity. Taeho had been present during many important operations, but always in support roles. He had managed supply lines for frontline troops. He had coordinated equipment delivery to remote outposts. He had organized evacuation procedures for civilians in danger zones. Look at this, Captain Yu said, pointing to a report from 15 years ago. The Battle of Europa Station. You were there managing ammunition supplies for the defenders. I remember that, Taeho said. It was a difficult job because the supply ships could only reach the station once every 3 weeks. I had to carefully ration the ammunition to make sure the soldiers didn't run out. The human forces held that station for 6 months against overwhelming alien attack, Colonel Lee noted. It was considered one of our greatest defensive victories. They continued reviewing records. The siege of New Kyoto, where Taeho had managed food distribution for both military and civilian personnel. The liberation of Titan, where he had coordinated medical supply delivery across multiple battle zones. The defense of Alpha Centauri, where he had organized equipment maintenance for the entire fleet. In every case, the pattern was the same. Taeho had been there, working behind the scenes, making sure that human forces had what they needed to fight effectively. But he had never fired a shot at the enemy. I still don't understand why the aliens would be interested in my record, Taeho said. What I do is important, but it's not military action in the way they think about it. Captain Yu looked thoughtful. Maybe that's exactly the point, he said. Maybe they don't understand what you do, so they're interpreting it differently. What do you mean? Colonel Lee asked. Well, Captain Yu explained, most alien species we've encountered have very different ideas about how wars should be fought. Some of them believe that individual warriors should handle everything themselves. They might not understand how human military units work together. Taeho considered this. So they see that I'm present during successful operations, and they assume I must be fighting? It's possible, Captain Yu said. They might not realize that your job is to support other fighters, not to fight directly. Colonel Lee looked at his watch. We need to prepare a response to the tribunal. They want detailed information about Taeho's service record, and they want it soon. What should we tell them? Taeho asked. The truth, Colonel Lee replied. We'll provide them with your complete service record and explain exactly what your job involves. Hopefully that will clear up any misunderstanding. As the day ended, Taeho returned to his small apartment near the base. He made dinner and tried to watch television, but he couldn't stop thinking about the strange situation he found himself in. Somewhere in space, powerful alien beings thought he was a deadly warrior. They wanted to study his combat record and add his name to their databases of great fighters. The irony was not lost on him. He had spent his entire career trying to help. Soldiers survive battles, not trying to kill enemies. His success was measured by how well he could keep human forces supplied and equipped, not by how many aliens he could destroy. But apparently the rest of the galaxy didn't understand that distinction. Dr. Yoon So-ra arrived at Seoul Military Base early in the morning, carrying 3 large boxes of files and a laptop computer. She was a military historian who specialized in studying Earth's conflicts with alien species. General Park Min-ho had asked her to investigate the Kim Tae-ho situation and find out why aliens were interested in a supply officer. Dr. Yoon was a tall, serious woman in her 50s who had spent most of her career studying how humans fought against alien forces. She had written books about famous battles and analyzed the strategies that had led to human victories. When she heard about the Vorthak Empire's request, she became very curious. "This is a fascinating case," she told Colonel Lee when they met in his office. "I've brought records of every major human military operation from the past 30 years. If there's a pattern involving Kim Tae-ho, I should be able to find it." Tae-ho joined them, still feeling confused about the whole situation. He watched as Dr. Yoon spread papers and maps across a large conference table. She had detailed reports from battles across dozens of different star systems. "Let's start with the obvious ones," Dr. Yoon said. "Captain Yu mentioned Europa Station, New Kyoto, and Titan. Those were three of our most important victories in the early years of alien contact." She pulled out thick files for each battle. The Europa Station file contained hundreds of pages of reports, maps, and photographs. Dr. Yoon had studied this battle many times before, but now she was looking for something specific. Europa Station was a critical mining facility in the outer system, she explained. When the Zephyrian fleet attacked, most people thought the human defenders would be overwhelmed in a few days. Instead, they held out for 6 months and eventually forced the aliens to retreat. She flipped through pages of tactical reports. "The interesting thing is that the human forces were outnumbered 5-1. The aliens had better ships and more advanced weapons. By all logical calculations, they should have won easily." Tae-ho looked at a photograph of Europa Station. It was a large metal structure built into an asteroid, with defensive weapons mounted on its surface. "I remember how difficult it was to keep the defenders supplied," he said. "The supply ships could only get through the alien blockade every few weeks." "That's exactly what I'm interested in," Dr. Yoon said. She pulled out a supply report with Tae-ho's signature on it. "According to this document, you calculated that the defenders would need exactly 2,847 ammunition units to last between supply runs. You also arranged for emergency food rations and medical supplies." "I just did my job," Tae-ho said. "I made sure the soldiers had what they needed." Dr. Yoon nodded, but she was clearly thinking about something. She moved to the New Kyoto files. This was an even more impressive victory. A small human colony managed to fight off 3 different alien invasion forces over a period of 2 years. The New Kyoto colony had only 50,000 human residents, but it had strategic importance because it controlled a major shipping route. 3 different alien species had tried to capture it, and all 3 had failed. The defenders were badly outnumbered each time, Dr. Yoon continued, but they never ran out of supplies, and their equipment always worked perfectly. "According to these reports, you managed the logistics for the entire defense." Tae-ho remembered New Kyoto clearly. It was challenging because we had to support both military and civilian personnel. The civilians couldn't be evacuated because the aliens controlled all the escape routes. I had to make sure everyone had enough food and medical care while also keeping the military units supplied with ammunition and equipment. Dr. Yoon was taking notes on her laptop. "What about Titan?" she asked. The liberation of Titan had been one of humanity's greatest military achievements. An entire planet had been freed from alien occupation by a human task force that was smaller than the enemy garrison. The operation had taken 8 months and had resulted in the complete defeat of the alien-occupying forces. I coordinated medical supplies for that operation, Tae-ho said. It was complicated because we had multiple task forces operating in different regions of the planet. I had to make sure that wounded soldiers could be treated quickly, no matter where they were. Dr. Yoon spent the next several hours going through more files. She found Tai Ho's name in the records of dozens of other operations. Sometimes his role was small, managing spare parts for a single unit. Sometimes it was larger, coordinating supplies for an entire invasion force. But he was always there, working in the background, making sure human forces had what they needed. As the day progressed, a clear pattern began to emerge. Dr. Yoon created a chart on her laptop showing human military performance over the past 30 years. Operations where Tai Ho was involved were marked in red. Operations where he was not involved were marked in blue. The difference was dramatic. When Tai Ho was present, human forces performed much better than expected. They had fewer equipment failures, better ammunition availability, and higher survival rates. Enemy casualties were significantly higher, and objectives were completed more quickly. "This is remarkable," Dr. Yoon said, staring at her chart. "The pattern is so clear that it's impossible to ignore." Colonel Lee looked at the data. "But how is that possible? Tai Ho manages supplies. He doesn't fight." "That's exactly the point," Dr. Yoon replied. "In most alien military cultures, each warrior is expected to handle their own needs. They don't have the kind of logistics support systems that humans use. They probably don't understand how much difference good logistics can make." She pulled up another chart showing enemy casualties in battles where Tai Ho was present. The numbers were staggering. Over 30 years, alien forces had lost more than 2 million soldiers in operations where Tai Ho had managed logistics support. 2 million, Tai Ho said quietly. "But I never killed any of them directly." "No," Dr. Yoon agreed. "But you enabled other humans to be much more effective fighters. When soldiers have reliable equipment, adequate ammunition, and proper medical support, they can focus entirely on combat. They don't have to worry about running out of supplies or dealing with broken equipment." She showed them a specific example from the Battle of Proxima Centauri. In this engagement, human forces were supposed to retreat after inflicting minimal damage on the enemy. Instead, they stayed and fought for 3 days, ultimately destroying the entire alien fleet. "I remember that battle," Tai Ho said. "The original plan called for a hit-and-run attack, but the field commander decided to press the advantage when he realized we had enough ammunition for an extended fight." "Exactly," Dr. Yoon said. "The commander could make that decision because he knew his forces were properly supplied. In most armies, he would have had to retreat because his soldiers might run out of ammunition or food." Colonel Lee was studying the charts carefully. "So the aliens see that Tai Ho is present during operations where they suffer heavy casualties, and they assume he must be personally responsible for killing their soldiers." "That's my theory," Dr. Yoon said. "They don't understand that his contribution is indirect. They see the results, massive alien casualties, and they naturally assume that he must be some kind of super warrior." She closed her laptop and looked at both men. "The interesting thing is that they're not entirely wrong. Tai Ho may not fire weapons in combat, but his work has resulted in more enemy deaths than any individual human soldier. From a strategic perspective, he really is one of our most effective military assets." Tai Ho felt uncomfortable with this assessment. "I don't like thinking about it that way. My job is to help our soldiers, not to kill aliens." "I understand," Dr. Yoon said gently. "But the aliens don't see that distinction. In their minds, the result is what matters. And the result of your work has been the deaths of millions of their soldiers." Colonel Lee stood up and walked to the window. "This explains why the Vorthak Empire is interested in him. If their records show this pattern, they probably think we're hiding our most dangerous weapon. What should we do? Tae-ho asked. Doctor. Yoon gathered her papers. We tell them the truth. We explain exactly what Tae-ho does and how human logistics systems work. Whether they understand it or not, at least we'll be honest. And if they don't believe us, Colonel Lee asked, then we'll have to deal with that problem when it comes, Dr. Yoon replied. But I think it's important for them to learn how humans really fight. It might help prevent future conflicts if they understand that our strength comes from cooperation, not from individual warriors. The Galactic Tribunal's main chamber was enormous. The ceiling stretched high above, covered with lights that looked like stars. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in curved rows, their strange forms creating a bizarre collection of shapes and colors. At the center of the chamber, a raised platform held the judge's bench, where 12 alien beings from different worlds would decide the case. Hee-Jin Park walked into the chamber with Kim Tae-ho beside her. Tae-ho wore his dress military uniform, clean and simple with no medals or decorations. He looked around at the alien faces watching him and felt very small. These beings could decide the fate of Earth's relations with the rest of the galaxy. Dr. Yoon Sora and Colonel Lee Dong-woo sat in the human delegation section, surrounded by boxes of documents and computer tablets. They had spent weeks preparing for this hearing, gathering evidence to explain the truth about Tae-ho's military service. Judge Queller of the Nexian Federation called the hearing to order. The Nexians were tall, thin beings with silver skin and large eyes. Judge Queller spoke in a melodic voice that was translated into human language by the chamber's computer systems. This tribunal has been convened to examine the military record of the human designated as Kim Tae-ho, Judge Queller announced. The Vorthak Empire has requested access to this individual's death count for inclusion in their Grand War archives. The human delegation claims that no such count exists. We will now hear evidence from both sides. Commander Vextala stood up from the Vorthak section. His multiple arms moved as he spoke, gesturing toward a large display screen that showed charts and numbers. Honored judges, the commander began, our intelligence analysts have spent months studying human military operations. We have identified a clear pattern that points to Kim Tae-ho as one of the most deadly warriors in galactic history. The display screen showed a map of the galaxy with red markers indicating major battles. In every engagement marked on this map, human forces achieved victory against superior alien numbers. In every case, enemy casualties were far higher than expected, and in every case, Kim Tae-ho was present in the operational theater. Commander Vextala pressed a control, and the screen showed a list of numbers. The Battle of Europa Station, 47,000 Zephyrian casualties. The Siege of New Kyoto, 89,000 casualties across 3 different alien forces. The Liberation of Titan, 156,000 Krellin occupation troops killed or captured. More numbers appeared on the screen. Over 30 years of warfare, operations involving Kim Tae-ho have resulted in 2.3 million alien casualties. This number exceeds the individual kill count of any known warrior in galactic records. The alien representatives in the chamber murmured among themselves. The number was impressive, even by galactic standards. Judge Thokran of the Brutarian clans leaned forward, his massive form casting a shadow across the platform. These numbers are indeed significant, Judge Thokran said in his deep, rumbling voice. If accurate, they would make this human one of the greatest warriors of all time. Commander Vextala nodded. That is exactly our conclusion. We believe that humans are hiding Kim Tae-ho's true nature. Perhaps he is a genetically enhanced super soldier, or perhaps he possesses psychic abilities that allow him to kill enemies from great distances. We have also considered the possibility, the commander continued, that Kim Tae-ho uses advanced human technology unknown to the rest of the galaxy, some form of invisible weapon or mind control device that makes enemy soldiers less effective in battle. Hyojin Park stood up to respond. She activated her own display screen, which showed Kim Tae-ho's official military record. "Honored judges," she said, "the human delegation appreciates the tribunal's attention to this matter. However, we must respectfully disagree with the Vorthak Empire's interpretation of the evidence." Her screen showed Tae-ho's service record in simple, clear terms. Kim Tae-ho has served in Earth's military for 22 years. His official record shows 0 confirmed kills, 0 combat deployments, and 0 weapons discharged in battle situations. He is a logistics specialist whose job is to manage supplies and equipment for other soldiers. She clicked to the next screen, which showed photographs of Tae-ho at work. These images show Kim Tae-ho performing his actual duties. As you can see, he spends his time in warehouses, offices, and supply depots. He organizes deliveries, maintains inventory records, and coordinates equipment maintenance. Judge Zixara of the Crystalline Hegemony spoke in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. "Ambassador Park, how do you explain the correlation between this individual's presence and the high enemy casualty rates?" "We believe this is a misunderstanding, based on different military cultures," Hyojin replied. "Human military doctrine emphasizes support systems and logistics. Our soldiers fight more effectively when they have reliable supplies and equipment. Kim Tae-ho's excellent work in logistics contributes to overall military success, but he does not personally engage in combat." Commander Vexitala stood up again, his voice showing frustration. "This explanation is insufficient. Our analysis shows that human forces become 3 times more effective when Kim Tae-ho is present. Such dramatic improvement cannot result from mere supply management." "With respect, Commander," Hyojin said, "I believe it can. Human military effectiveness depends heavily on logistics support. Soldiers with adequate ammunition, reliable equipment, and proper medical care can focus entirely on their combat missions." She gestured toward Tae-ho, who was sitting quietly in his chair. "Kim Tae-ho is exceptionally skilled at his job. His attention to detail and problem-solving abilities ensure that human forces always have what they need to fight effectively." Judge Queller raised one slender hand for silence. "We will now hear testimony from Kim Tae-ho himself. Please approach the witness platform." Tae-ho walked to the center of the chamber, feeling the eyes of dozens of alien beings watching him. He had never spoken in front of so many important people before, and his hands were shaking slightly. But he knew he had to tell the truth. "State your name and occupation for the record," Judge Queller said. "My name is Kim Tae-ho," he replied, his voice echoing in the large chamber. "I am a supply sergeant in the Earth Defense Force. I manage equipment and supplies for military units." Judge Thokran leaned forward, studying Tae-ho with interest. "You appear to be a normal human, with no obvious physical enhancements. Do you possess any special abilities or training that would make you an effective warrior?" "No, sir," Tae-ho answered. "I have basic military training that all soldiers receive, but I have never been trained for combat roles. My specialty is logistics management." "Have you ever killed an enemy soldier in battle?" Judge Zixara asked. "No, ma'am. I have never fired a weapon at an enemy. I have never been in a direct combat situation." Commander Vextala spoke from his section. "If you Are not a warrior human? Then explain how your presence results in the deaths of millions of our people. Taeho thought carefully before answering. He knew that his response might affect relations between Earth and the rest of the galaxy. "Commander," he said, "I don't kill enemy soldiers directly, but my job is to make sure that human soldiers have everything they need to do their jobs effectively. When soldiers don't have to worry about running out of ammunition or food, they can focus on fighting. When their equipment works properly, they can complete their missions successfully." He paused, looking around the chamber at the alien faces. "I take pride in my work because it helps keep human soldiers alive and helps them protect Earth from threats. If that work also results in enemy casualties, then that is an unfortunate consequence of war." The chamber was silent for a moment. Then Judge Queller spoke again. "Kim Taeho, are you saying that your contribution to military operations is indirect? That you enable other humans to fight more effectively rather than fighting yourself?" "Yes, sir. That is exactly what I'm saying." Commander Vextala stood up again, his voice showing disbelief. "This is impossible. No single support worker could have such a dramatic effect on military operations." "With respect, Commander," Taeho replied, "I think you might be underestimating how important logistics are to human military operations. In our culture, we believe that armies succeed or fail based on their support systems, not just on individual warriors." The hearing continued for several more hours, with alien representatives asking detailed questions about human military doctrine and logistics procedures. Many of them seemed confused by the concept that support workers could be as important as frontline fighters. As the day ended, Judge Queller announced that the tribunal would deliberate overnight and present their decision the following morning. Taeho returned to his quarters, exhausted but hopeful that he had explained the situation. Clearly, whether the aliens would understand or accept his explanation remained to be seen. The second day of the tribunal hearing began with Kim Taeho returning to the witness platform. Judge Queller had announced that the alien representatives wanted to hear more detailed explanations about how human military operations actually worked. Many of them were still confused about how a supply officer could be connected to so many enemy casualties. Judge Vex Moran of the Altarian Collective spoke first. The Altarians were insect-like beings who communicated through chemical signals translated by computers. "Kim Taeho," the judge said, "please explain how you believe your work contributed to the Battle of Europa Station." Taeho nodded and activated a small display screen that Dr. Yoon had prepared for him. It showed a simple diagram of Europa Station and the surrounding space. Europa Station was a mining facility built into an asteroid, Taeho began. When the Zephyrian fleet attacked, the station was defended by about 3,000 human soldiers. The enemy had 15,000 troops and controlled all the space around the station. He pointed to the diagram, which showed the positions of enemy ships. The Zephyrians created a blockade that made it very difficult for supply ships to reach the station. Before the battle, the station's commanders thought they only had enough supplies to last for 2 weeks. Commander Vextala interrupted from the Vorthak section. If the humans were so badly outnumbered and low on supplies, how did they manage to hold out for 6 months? That's where logistics became critical, Taeho replied. I studied the station's inventory records and calculated exactly how much ammunition, food, and medical supplies the defenders would need. Then I worked with the supply ship commanders to figure out the most efficient way to deliver those supplies. He changed the display to show a supply schedule. Instead of sending large supply ships that the enemy could easily detect and destroy, we sent smaller ships at irregular intervals. I calculated the minimum amount of supplies needed between each delivery, and I made sure that nothing was wasted. Judge Zixara of the crystalline hegemony spoke in her wind chime voice. This still does not explain why enemy casualties were so high. Teho smiled slightly. That's because the Zephyrians made their battle plans based on wrong assumptions. They expected the human defenders to run out of ammunition after 2 weeks, so they planned a long siege. They thought they could just wait for us to surrender. He pointed to another part of the diagram. But because our supply system worked efficiently, the human soldiers never ran out of ammunition. When the Zephyrians attacked, expecting to face desperate defenders with empty weapons, they instead faced soldiers with full magazines and proper equipment. The enemy commanders were confused, Teho continued. They couldn't understand why human resistance stayed strong after months of fighting. They kept sending assault forces against defenders who were well supplied and ready for battle. Commander Vexitala's multiple arms moved in what might have been frustration. But surely the individual human soldiers were responsible for killing. The enemy troops, not you. That's true, Teho agreed. I never fired a shot during that battle. But the human soldiers could fight effectively because they knew their weapons would work. They had enough ammunition, and they had medical support if they were wounded. Without reliable logistics, even the best fighters become much less effective. Dr. Yun Sora stood up from the human delegation section. Honored judges, may I provide some additional context about human military philosophy? Judge Queller nodded permission, and Dr. Yun approached a second display screen. Most alien species we have encountered treat warfare as a collection of individual contests, she explained. Warriors are expected to be self-sufficient and handle their own needs. Success is measured by personal combat ability. She showed a diagram comparing different military structures. Human military doctrine is based on a different principle. We believe that armies are systems, and that every part of the system must work together for success. Individual soldiers are important, but they are most effective when they are supported by specialists in logistics, communications, medical care, and equipment maintenance. Judge Thokron of the Brutarian clans leaned forward. Are you saying that humans are not strong individual fighters? Not exactly, Dr. Yun replied. Human soldiers can be very effective fighters when necessary, but our real strength comes from our ability to make ordinary soldiers perform at extraordinary levels through cooperation and support. She clicked to a new diagram that showed the structure of a human military unit. In most alien armies, each warrior must carry their own food, ammunition, and medical supplies. They must maintain their own equipment and handle their own communications. This limits how long they can fight and how much equipment they can carry. Human soldiers, by contrast, are supported by specialists like Kim Tae-ho. They can carry more ammunition because they know more will be delivered when needed. They can focus entirely on fighting because other people handle their food, medical care, and equipment maintenance. Commander Vexitala stood up again. This system sounds inefficient. Why use multiple people to do what one warrior could handle alone? Teho answered this question himself. Because it works better, Commander. A soldier who has to carry 3 days of food and water can only carry half as much ammunition. A soldier who has to stop fighting to repair his equipment is not fighting during that time. A soldier who has to worry about medical care might avoid necessary risks. He gestured toward the assembled aliens. When human soldiers know that logistics specialists are handling their supplies, medical specialists are ready to treat their wounds, and maintenance specialists are keeping their equipment working, they can focus 100% on combat. Judge Vexmaran clicked his mandibles in what might have been understanding. So, your role is to free other humans from non-combat concerns, allowing them to be more effective fighters. Exactly, Taeho said. And when soldiers are more effective, they complete their missions faster and with fewer casualties on both sides. Judge Zixara spoke again. But the enemy casualties in battles where you were present were not fewer. They were much higher than normal. Taeho nodded sadly. That's true, and I regret that. But when human forces are properly supplied and equipped, they tend to win battles more decisively. Quick, decisive victories often result in higher immediate casualties but lower total casualties over time. He brought up another example on his display. During the siege of New Kyoto, the first alien invasion force expected the human defenders to surrender after a few weeks. Instead, the defenders were able to fight for 2 years because they had reliable food and ammunition supplies. The alien commanders kept sending more troops, thinking that overwhelming numbers would eventually succeed. But each new attack was defeated by well-supplied defenders. If the aliens had understood how effective human logistics were, they might have negotiated, instead of continuing to attack. Dr. Yoon added another point. This illustrates an important difference between human and alien military thinking. Most alien cultures see prolonged battles as tests of individual warrior strength. Humans see prolonged battles as logistics challenges that can be solved through careful planning and efficient supply systems. Commander Vextala was quiet for a long moment, clearly thinking about what he had heard. Finally, he spoke again. If what you say is true, then Kim Tae-ho's contribution to human military success is indeed significant, even though he does not fight directly. That's correct, Tae-ho replied. I'm proud of my work because it helps protect Earth and keeps human soldiers alive. But I want to be clear that I'm not some kind of secret super warrior. I'm just a supply sergeant who tries to do his job well. Judge Queller raised her hand for attention. The tribunal would like to understand more about how this logistics system works in practice. Kim Tae-ho, can you walk us through a specific example of how you managed supplies during a military operation? Tae-ho nodded and prepared to explain the liberation of Titan, one of the most complex logistics operations of his career. As he began to speak, he noticed that the alien representatives were listening more carefully now, beginning to understand that human warfare was more complicated than they had realized. As the tribunal hearing continued into its third day, something remarkable began to happen. The alien representatives started asking different kinds of questions. Instead of demanding to know about Kim Tae-ho's secret weapons or special powers, they began asking about human military organization and logistics procedures. War Chief Thokmar of the Brutarian clans was the first to openly admit confusion about human warfare. The Brutarians were large, powerful beings who valued individual strength above all else. Their warriors were famous throughout the galaxy for their ability to fight with primitive weapons against overwhelming odds. Kim Tae-ho, War Chief Thokmar, said in his deep, rumbling voice, I am beginning to understand that human warfare is very different from Brutarian combat traditions. In our culture, each warrior provides for himself. We carry our own food, weapons, and medical supplies. We maintain our own equipment and fight our own battles. He paused, his massive form shifting in his seat. This has always worked well for us. Our warriors are self-sufficient and can fight alone if necessary. But you are describing a system where many people support each individual fighter. Tae-ho nodded respectfully. That's correct, War Chief. Humans have learned that specialization makes everyone more effective. A soldier who focuses only on fighting becomes a better fighter. A logistics specialist who focuses only on supplies becomes better at managing supplies. But how do you coordinate so many different people? Thokmar asked. In Brutarian culture, we avoid complex organizations because they are difficult to control. It requires good communication and training, Tejo replied. But the results are worth the effort. A human soldier supported by specialists can carry twice as much ammunition and fight 3 times longer than a soldier who must handle everything alone. High Commander Zixara of the Crystalline Hegemony spoke next. Her people communicated through light patterns that were translated by the Tribunal's computers. Our forces have fought against human armies several times over the past 20 years. We have always been puzzled by human tactical behavior. She activated a display showing recordings from previous battles. In these engagements, human soldiers often took risks that seemed foolish to our commanders. They would advance into dangerous positions or continue fighting when retreat seemed more logical. We interpreted this as reckless bravery or poor tactical judgment, Commander Zixara continued. But based on what we have heard today, I believe we were wrong. The human soldiers were taking calculated risks because they knew they had reliable support. Tejo smiled. That's exactly right, Commander. A soldier who knows that medical help is available will take different risks than a soldier who must treat his own wounds. A soldier who knows that ammunition will be delivered on schedule will use his current ammunition more aggressively. Dr. Yoon Sora stood up to add more information. This is one of the fundamental principles of human military doctrine. We call it force multiplication. By providing excellent support to our soldiers, we can make a small number of fighters much more effective than a large number of unsupported fighters. She showed a chart comparing human and alien military structures. Most alien armies focus on recruiting the strongest, fastest, or most intelligent individuals. Human armies focus on creating systems that make ordinary individuals perform at extraordinary levels. Commander Vextala of the Vorthak Empire had been listening quietly, but now he spoke with a tone of grudging respect. This explains many things that have puzzled our military analysts. Human forces consistently perform better than their individual capabilities would suggest. He activated his own display, showing Vorthak intelligence reports. Our scouts often reported that human soldiers seem to have unlimited ammunition and perfect equipment. We assumed this was due to superior technology, but now I understand that it was due to superior logistics. We also noticed that human forces rarely retreated due to supply shortages. Commander Vextala continued. In Vorthak warfare, many battles are won when the enemy runs out of ammunition or food. This strategy has never worked against human forces. Tejo felt a strange mix of pride and sadness as he listened to these revelations. Commander, I'm glad that our logistics systems have been effective at protecting human forces. But I'm sorry that this has led to so many casualties on all sides. The casualties were not your fault, Commander Vexitala replied. They were the result of our failure to understand how humans fight. We continued using strategies that work against other species, not realizing that humans operate according to different principles. Judge Queller of the Nexian Federation spoke for the first time that day. It appears that this tribunal has uncovered a significant gap in galactic understanding of human military capabilities. Many species have been fighting humans using incorrect assumptions about human strengths and weaknesses. Ambassador Krelnath of the Valdorian Republic nodded agreement. The Valdorians were known for their careful, methodical approach to warfare. Our military academies teach that logistics are a secondary concern, something to be handled after the primary battle strategy is established. Human doctrine seems to treat logistics as equally important to combat tactics. Actually, Dr. Yoon said, human military leaders often say that logistics are more important than tactics. The best battle plan in the galaxy is useless if your soldiers don't have ammunition when they need it. This statement caused a stir among the alien representatives. Several of them began talking quietly among themselves, clearly reconsidering their understanding of warfare. General Huckstar of the Felonian Star Empire stood up to speak. The Felonians were cat-like beings known for their quick reflexes and individual hunting skills. This revelation has serious implications for all our species. If human military effectiveness comes from organizational systems rather than individual capability, then we have been preparing for the wrong kind of conflict. What do you mean? Judge Queller asked. Most of our military training focuses on producing superior individual warriors, General Huckstar explained. We spend enormous resources on genetic enhancement, combat stimulants, and advanced personal weapons, but if human success comes from cooperation and support systems, then our approach is fundamentally flawed. Tejo felt uncomfortable being at the center of such a profound discussion about galactic military policy. I want to emphasize that humans don't want to fight anyone. Our logistics systems were developed to protect Earth and human colonies, not to threaten other species. We understand that, Commander Vexitala said. But the effectiveness of your systems has made humans a dominant military force in this galaxy, whether you intended that or not. War Chief Thokmar spoke again, his voice thoughtful. Among the Brutarian clans, we have always believed that the strongest warrior would naturally become the leader. But human society seems to be based on cooperation between many different types of people. That's true, Tejo replied. In human culture, we believe that everyone has different strengths. Some people are good fighters. Some are good at organizing supplies. Some are good at maintaining equipment. When we work together, we all become more effective. Judge Zixara's lights pulsed in what might have been understanding. This explains why diplomatic negotiations with humans are also different. You approach problems as groups rather than as individuals. Human negotiators often seem to have access to information and resources that should not be available to them personally, she continued. Now I realize that they are supported by teams of specialists, just like your soldiers. Dr. Yoon nodded. That's correct. Human diplomats work with researchers, analysts, economists, and cultural specialists. No single human is expected to be an expert in everything. The revelation was clearly having a profound effect on the alien representatives. Many of them were beginning to realize that their entire understanding of human capabilities had been wrong. They had been looking for human super warriors and secret weapons, when the real secret was human cooperation and organization. Commander Vexitala stood up and addressed the tribunal formally. Honored judges, the Vorthak Empire withdraws its request for Kim Taeho's death count. We now understand that such a count would be meaningless, because his contribution to military operations cannot be measured in individual kills. He turned toward Taeho with what might have been respect. However, we would like to request permission to study human logistics systems. If our understanding is correct, these systems represent a revolutionary approach to warfare that could benefit all species. Taeho looked toward Ambassador Park, who nodded encouragingly. I would be happy to share information about human logistics procedures, Commander, but I hope this knowledge will be used to prevent conflicts, not to make wars more deadly. That is our hope as well, Commander Vextala replied. As the day's session ended, Taeho realized that something important had changed. The galaxy's understanding of human capabilities had been fundamentally altered, and he had played a part in that change. On the fourth and final day of the tribunal hearing, Colonel Lee Dong-woo took the witness platform to present the human military's official position on Kim Taeho's service record. The alien representatives had spent the previous day asking detailed questions about human military organization, and now they wanted to understand the broader implications of what they had learned. Colonel Lee was a serious, experienced officer who had commanded troops in several conflicts with alien forces. He had brought detailed charts and presentations to help explain human military doctrine to beings whose cultures had very different approaches to warfare. "Honored judges," Colonel Lee began, "I have been asked to explain how the human military views Kim Tae-ho's contributions to our operations. I want to start by making something very clear. In human military thinking, Kim Tae-ho is not unusual. He is an excellent example of what we call a force multiplier, but there are thousands of other soldiers who perform similar roles." This statement caused surprised murmurs among the alien representatives. Commander Vexitala of the Vorthak Empire leaned forward with obvious interest. "Are you saying that humans have thousands of soldiers who can achieve effects similar to Kim Tae-ho?" the commander asked. "Yes," Colonel Lee replied. "Kim Tae-ho is exceptionally skilled at his job, but his job itself is common in human military units. Every human military operation includes logistics specialists, communications experts, medical personnel, equipment maintenance teams, and intelligence analysts." He activated a display showing the organizational structure of a typical human military unit. This diagram shows how a human infantry battalion is organized. Out of 800 personnel, only about 300 are direct combat soldiers. The other 500 provide various forms of support. Judge Queller of the Nexian Federation spoke in her melodic voice. "This seems remarkably inefficient. Why would you need so many support personnel for so few fighters?" "Because it works," Colonel Lee answered simply. "Those 300 combat soldiers, supported by 500 specialists, can defeat enemy forces 3 times their size. The support personnel make each fighter dramatically more effective." He changed the display to show comparative battle results. "In battles where human forces have full logistics support, our casualties are typically 60% lower than in battles where support is limited. At the same time, our effectiveness against enemy forces increases by approximately 300%. War Chief Thokmar of the Brutarian clans spoke in his deep voice. "These numbers suggest that human military success depends more on organization than on individual warrior ability." "That's exactly correct," Colonel Lee agreed. "Human soldiers receive good training and equipment, but our real advantage comes from how we organize and coordinate our forces." He clicked to a new chart showing human military philosophy. "Most alien cultures that we've encountered focus on producing superior individual warriors. Humans focus on producing superior military systems. We believe that ordinary people, properly organized and supported, can achieve extraordinary results." Dr. Yoon Sora joined Colonel Lee at the presentation area. "This philosophy extends beyond just military operations," she explained. "Human society is built around the idea of specialization and cooperation. We have doctors who focus only on medicine, engineers who focus only on technology, teachers who focus only on education. Each specialist becomes very good at their particular job," she continued. "But more importantly, when specialists work together, they can solve problems that no individual could handle alone." High Commander Zixara of the Crystalline Hegemony pulsed her lights in what seemed like understanding. "This explains why human diplomatic delegations are so effective. We always wondered how human ambassadors could have such detailed knowledge about so many different subjects." Ambassador Hyjin Park nodded. "Human diplomats work with teams of experts in economics, military affairs, science, and cultural studies. No single person could master all these fields, but a team of specialists can provide comprehensive expertise." Commander Vex Tala stood up and began pacing, his multiple arms moving as he thought. This has profound implications for how we understand human capabilities. If human strength comes from organization rather than individual ability, then humans could theoretically become much more powerful as their population and organization grow. That's a possibility, Colonel Lee admitted. But humans prefer to use our organizational abilities for peaceful purposes. Our goal is to protect Earth and human colonies, not to conquer other species. Judge Vex Moran of the Altarian Collective clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. Our intelligence reports have noted that human settlements often succeed in environments where other species fail. We assumed this was due to superior technology, but perhaps it is due to superior organization. Human colonies do tend to be successful, Dr. Yoon agreed. But it's not because individual human colonists are stronger or smarter than other species. It's because human colonies are designed as integrated systems where everyone has a specific role to play. She showed images of human settlements on various worlds. A typical human colony includes farmers, engineers, doctors, teachers, security personnel, and administrators. Each group focuses on their specialty, but they all work together to make the colony successful. This is very different from how most alien species establish colonies, she continued. Most other species send individual pioneers who are expected to handle all aspects of survival on their own. Taeho, who had been sitting quietly during most of this discussion, asked permission to speak. If I may, honored judges, I'd like to say something about what this means for me personally. Judge Queller nodded for him to continue. When this hearing began, I was confused and worried, Taeho said. I couldn't understand why anyone would think I was some kind of super warrior. I'm just a supply sergeant who tries to do his job well. He looked around at the alien faces watching him. But I've learned something important during these discussions. The work I do, making sure soldiers have the supplies and equipment they need, is more important than I realized. Not because it makes me special, but because it's part of a system that makes all of us more effective. I'm proud that my work has helped protect Earth and human colonies, he continued. But I want everyone to understand that I couldn't do my job without the help of many other people. I work with transportation specialists who deliver supplies, maintenance teams who keep equipment working, communications experts who coordinate operations, and many others. Commander Vex Tala stopped pacing and looked directly at Taeho. You are saying that even your individual contribution depends on support from other specialists. Exactly, Taeho replied. That's the point of the human system. Everyone supports everyone else, and the result is that we're all more effective than we could be on our own. Judge Thakran of the Brutarian clans leaned back in his seat, clearly reconsidering many assumptions about human society. This is a fundamentally different approach to organizing intelligent beings. Most species focus on hierarchy and individual achievement. Humans seem to focus on cooperation and mutual support. Colonel Lee nodded. That's a good summary of human military philosophy. We believe that the best way to achieve success is to help everyone perform at their highest level, rather than depending on a few exceptional individuals. This also explains why human forces are so difficult to defeat, Commander Vexitala observed. When you fight humans, you're not just fighting the soldiers you can see. You're fighting an entire support system designed to make those soldiers as effective as possible. But also, Dr. Yoon added, humans are willing to share this knowledge with other species. We believe that better organization and cooperation can benefit everyone in the galaxy. Judge Queller called for a brief recess so that the alien representatives could discuss what they had learned. As the session paused, Tejo realized that the hearing had become something much larger than a simple investigation of his military record. It had become a revelation about the fundamental differences between human and alien approaches to civilization itself. When the session resumed, Judge Queller announced that the tribunal was ready to reach its final decision about the case. The fate of Kim Taeho's military record, and possibly the future of human relations with the galaxy, would soon be determined. Judge Queller of the Nexian Federation stood at the center of the tribunal chamber as the final session began. The 12 alien judges had spent hours deliberating, and their decision would affect not only Kim Taeho's future, but also the relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, Judge Queller announced, this tribunal has reached several important conclusions about the case of Kim Taeho and his military service record. The chamber was completely silent. Representatives from dozens of alien species waited to hear the verdict, while the human delegation sat nervously in their section. First, Judge Queller continued, we find that Kim Tae-ho has never personally killed an enemy soldier in combat. His official record showing 0 confirmed kills is accurate. Commander Vextala of the Vorthak Empire nodded in acceptance of this finding. Second, the judge said, we find that Kim Tae-ho has indeed been present during military operations. That resulted in approximately 2.3 million alien casualties over 30 years of service. Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. The number was staggering, even though everyone had heard it before. Third, and most importantly, Judge Queller's voice rose to address the entire assembly. We find that Kim Tae-ho's contribution to these casualties was indirect but significant. His exceptional skill in logistics management enabled human forces to operate at levels of effectiveness far beyond what their individual capabilities would suggest. She paused, allowing the implications to sink in before continuing. Therefore, this tribunal officially recognizes Kim Tae-ho as one of the most strategically important military personnel in galactic history. However, his importance lies not in personal combat ability, but in his mastery of support systems that multiply the effectiveness of other fighters. Tae-ho felt a mixture of pride and discomfort at this recognition. He had never wanted to be famous, especially not for something connected to so many deaths. Judge Thokran of the Brutarian clans spoke next. The tribunal also recognizes that this case has revealed fundamental misunderstandings about human military doctrine. Many species have been fighting humans using strategies based on incorrect assumptions about human strengths and weaknesses. War Chief Thokmar stood up from the Brutarian delegation. On behalf of the Brutarian clans, I formally request permission to study human logistics and organizational methods. We believe our own military effectiveness could be greatly improved by adopting some human techniques. Similar requests came from several other alien delegations. The Vorthak Empire, the Crystalline Hegemony, the Altarian Collective, and 6 other species all asked for access to human military organizational knowledge. Ambassador Hye-Jin Park stood to respond. The human delegation is pleased by this interest. In our organizational methods, we will be happy to share information about logistics, supply management, and military support systems with any species that wishes to learn. She paused, then added an important condition. However, we ask that this knowledge be used to improve defensive capabilities and reduce casualties in any future conflicts, not to make warfare more destructive. Commander Vextala approached the human delegation area. Ambassador Park, the Vorthak Empire formally apologizes for our misunderstanding of Kim Tae-ho's role. We came here expecting to catalog a great warrior, but we have discovered something much more valuable. A new approach to military organization that could benefit all species. No apology is necessary, Hyejin replied. This has been an educational experience for all of us. Judge Zix Ara of the crystalline hegemony pulsed her lights in patterns that indicated deep thought. This tribunal hearing has revealed that many of our conflicts with humans have been based on mutual misunderstanding. Humans fight as integrated systems, while most of our species fight as collections of individuals. That's exactly right, Dr. Yoon Sora said. Many past conflicts might have been avoided if we had better understood each other's approaches to military operations. General Huckstar of the Felonian Star Empire stood up to make an announcement. The Felonian military academies will be revising our curriculum to include human organizational principles. We believe this knowledge could help us better understand not only human capabilities, but also the capabilities of other species who might use similar systems. Over the following hour, representatives from more than 20 different species made similar announcements. The revelation about human military doctrine was causing a galaxy-wide reconsideration of military strategy and organization. Tae-ho was invited to speak one final time before the tribunal. He walked to the witness platform, still feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had happened. "Honored judges," he began. "When this hearing started, I was confused about why anyone would be interested in my service record. I'm still not comfortable being called one of the most important military personnel in galactic history." He looked around at the assembled alien representatives. "But I'm glad that this discussion has helped different species understand each other better. If sharing information about human logistics can help prevent future conflicts, then I'm proud to be part of that process. I want to emphasize one more time that I've never wanted to hurt anyone," he continued. "My goal has always been to help protect human lives and human communities. If my work has resulted in casualties among other species, that was never my intention." Commander Vex Tala spoke from his seat. "Kim Tae-ho, your intentions are clear and honorable. The casualties that occurred during battles where you provided logistic support were the result of military conflicts, not personal malice." Judge Queller raised her hand for attention. "Before we conclude this hearing, the tribunal wishes to make one final declaration. The Galactic War Archives will be creating a new category of military recognition specifically for support personnel whose contributions multiply the effectiveness of combat forces." She looked directly at Tae-ho. "Kim Tae-ho will be the first individual entered in this new category, not as a warrior, but as a master of military logistics whose skills enabled countless victories. Furthermore," Judge Queller continued, "this tribunal recommends that all species establish formal programs for sharing organizational knowledge and military support techniques. Better understanding of different approaches to warfare may help prevent future conflicts." As the hearing concluded, representatives from various alien species approached Tae-ho to ask detailed questions about human logistics procedures. Some wanted to know about supply chain management. Others were interested in equipment maintenance protocols. Several asked about coordination between different types of specialists. Tae-ho answered their questions as clearly as he could, still amazed that his routine work had become the subject of galactic interest. Dr. Yoon and Colonel Lee helped with the more technical explanations, while Ambassador Park discussed the broader implications for interspecies relations. 3 months. Later, Tae-ho returned to his desk at Seoul Military Base. His life had returned to normal in many ways. He still managed supply inventories and coordinated equipment deliveries. But now he received regular visits from alien military observers who wanted to learn about human logistics systems. The Vorthak Empire had established a permanent liaison office at the base, staffed by officers who studied human organizational methods. Several other species had similar programs at human military facilities around the galaxy. More importantly, conflicts between humans and other species had decreased significantly. When alien commanders understood how human forces were organized, they could make better decisions about when to fight and when to negotiate. Human commanders, in turn, had learned more about alien military cultures and could adjust their own strategies accordingly. Taiho's death count had indeed stunned the galaxy, not because of his personal lethality, but because it revealed the power of human cooperation and organization. The quiet supply sergeant, who had never wanted to fight, had become a symbol of humanity's greatest strength, the ability to make ordinary people extraordinary through teamwork and mutual support. As he worked at his desk, processing supply requests and updating inventory records, Taiho reflected on the strange turn his life had taken. He was still the same person doing the same job, but now his work was part of a larger effort to help different species understand and cooperate with each other. The galaxy had learned that humanity's true weapon was not any individual super soldier, but rather the simple idea that everyone could achieve more when working together. It was a lesson that would reshape military thinking across dozens of worlds for generations to come. And Kim Tae-ho, the reluctant hero who had never fired a shot, in anger, had played a crucial role in teaching that lesson to the galaxy.